In this video, I'm going to explain that even if most people were terrified of AGI and thought it would probably lead to the destruction of our species, there's still a very good chance that our species would create AGI because of competition. Now, I'm a free market economist. I think markets are in general wonderful. I think they've given us enormous wealth. So this is cutting against my basic belief that markets are fantastic. But there are some things that markets aren't good at dealing with. One is pollution. I think AGI is another example of something where there's going to be massive market failures and where markets are going to give us a very, very bad result. Before I explain why I think market failures are likely to give us unfriendly AGI, let me give you the traditional economic reason for why markets don't do a good job regulating pollution. So imagine there's a factory owner, and this factory owner creates a lot of pollution, but he also creates products that consumers value. So the factory owner is considering, gee, is it worth it for me to create this product given that I'm going to create a lot of pollution? And let's imagine the factory owner lives in the town where the factory is, as do all the factory owner's customers. So the factory, if it operates, it'll create pollution. This pollution will harm everyone in a town, including the factory owner and the customers, but it'll also create products that the factory owner can sell to customers and get money, and of course money is a good thing for the factory owner. Well, there's benefit and cost to creating this product, right? So the benefit is the factory owner will get some profit, and the customer will get something that he or she values. Presumably, the customer is going to buy the product if the value he gets from the product is greater than what he pays. Now, the cost of the product, besides the raw materials of making the product, include the pollution. But most of the harm of the pollution will be suffered by people other than the factory owner and the customer. So it's possible that the harm caused by the pollution could be 1,000 times as much as the benefit received by the factory owner and the factory's customers. But the factory owner and customers could still support the factory operating because they'll say, gee, sure, we're creating 1,000 times as much harm as good, but we only absorb a tiny fraction of the harm. So from our selfish viewpoint, we're better off polluting and creating this product than we are not operating. Now imagine there's a lot of factories, and every customer and every owner says, you know what? We'd all be better off if there were no factories that are polluting, because there's just so much pollution out there that more than negates all of the benefit we receive from being able to make and sell these goods. It's still quite possible that the factories would operate in a market economy, because any one factory owner would say, you know what, I don't have the ability to determine what all these other factories do. All I can do is determine what my factory does. And there's just hundreds of factories. It's in my interest to run my factory and have it create a bit more pollution for me than it is to close down my factory, because if I close down my factory, I still have to suffer the pollution harm of all the other factories. So yeah, there'd be a little bit less pollution if I didn't pollute, but not that much. Similarly, a customer could say, I recognize that my buying products from these factories that pollute, yeah, that is contributing to the pollution, but really only in a small way. I mean, if just I didn't buy products, there's 1 million people in the town. I would reduce the pollution by a factor of 1 in 1,000,000. That's almost nothing. So I'd rather have no one bought this product, the products that pollute, but I don't have the ability to do that. All I can control is my own actions, and my individually not buying the products made with pollution, that has a trivial effect, so I'm better off polluting. So this is, if you know the term, a tragedy of the commons, where it's in the self-interest of every owner and every customer to engage in these polluting activities, even though they all could recognize that it would be better off if no one polluted. So the classic solution in this instance would be to say all of them would support government action to make it illegal to pollute, and everyone would find it in their self-interest if there was a law restricting pollution, even though in the absence of that law, it would still be in the interest of everyone to pollute, and everyone would pollute. There's an even more subtle argument for why a factory owner would be willing to pollute, even if he or she would much rather that no one pollutes. The factory owner will say to itself, look, I make, let's say, widgets. And what would happen if I don't make widgets? Well, imagine there's 1,000 factories. So the factory owner would first say, look, all I can do at most is cut back on pollution by a factor of 1 in 1,000 for this town. That's not a big deal. But he might even be doing less than that if he doesn't pollute, because you'll say, look, consumers want widgets in this town. And if I don't make the widgets, another firm will. So really, the only effect of my shutting my factory down is some other business person in the city will say, oh, wait a minute, no one's making widgets in the city, but you can sell widgets for a lot of money. I know, I'll open up a factory and pollute and create the widgets. So it's not just the case that if there's a lot of factories, any one factory owner would say, well, my cutting back only has a tiny effect on the total pollution. It might be the factory owners will say, gee, I'll have pretty much zero effect, at least in the long run, because my not polluting would just cause someone else to open a factory and make the good that I produce. AI is already insanely profitable for a lot of companies. I mean, Amazon, Facebook, Google, Microsoft, they're all working on AI, and AI has made these companies enormously profitable. And unfortunately, as they create better and better AI, as they move towards artificial general intelligence, their profits are going to increase. And even if they all accepted that AGI was really dangerous, there's a good chance competition would still push them to create AGI. First, if they're extraordinarily selfish, they would say, well, there's a cost and benefit to developing AGI. The benefit is that we get all this profit. The cost is there's some chance it could end the world. But most of the cost is not borne by us. I mean, sure, we'll die, but most of the people who die aren't us. But they also might reasonably say, you know what? If our company decides to abandon AI, it's really not going to do much good for mankind, even if AGI is extraordinarily dangerous, because someone else is just going to develop the products that we're currently developing. So a company like Google could quite reasonably say, yeah, maybe there's a very high chance that our AI programs will destroy the universe. Now, we shouldn't abandon them, however, because if we do abandon them, we've just opened up a huge space for another company. And if AI is destined to destroy mankind, well, then we're doomed pretty much no matter what. And even if all American companies said, hey, let's have a moratorium on AI till we make it safe, what they're basically saying is, okay, China, here's a giant field for you to make trillions of dollars in. So I think it'd be quite reasonable if the people running Google are terrified of AGI, and I hope they are, it would be very reasonable for them to say, maybe the best thing we can do is create really good AI, make a lot of profit, but also make it so there's not this giant market space for other firms to come in. Plus, we'll devote a lot of resources to trying to make our AI friendly. So because there isn't a single global entity that can say, all right, everyone, stop. No more AI, no more making it better until we figure out how to make it safe, it might be rationally in the self-interest and in the global interest of one company to keep pursuing AI, knowing it's incredibly dangerous, because the alternative of them not pursuing it is just for someone else to put even more money in AI. And this is what's so scary, that all the players could recognize it is dangerous and yet still proceed, because everyone could rationally say, you know what, if we decide not to put this $1 billion in AI, that's just going to cause someone else to put that $1 billion in AI, so it really won't do any good. Military competition is also going to push us to develop AGI. The better and better AI becomes, the more useful it is to a nation's military. So the United States could say, well, look, if we stop working on AI because it was too dangerous, we're ceding the field to China, and that might not be a very good thing. Plus, this is going to make it harder for countries to agree not to develop AI, because the United States could say, even if we get a treaty with China where all of us will go slow on AI, well, they might have an incentive to cheat and, develop AI and maybe be able to conquer the United States with drones that could shoot down any of our missiles. So military competition is going to drive the push for AI, and it makes it much, much harder to come to an agreement to restrict AI because the parties won't trust each other. And of course, knowing this, it becomes, again, more rational for companies like Google to say, the world doesn't have the political capacity to stop development on AI. And if we don't do it, someone else will. So the best thing we can do for mankind is to develop AI and try our hardest to make it safe, even recognizing, and I don't know if they believe this, but even if they recognize that this is almost certainly going to go very badly, because if we don't do it, instead of going from almost certainly to go badly, it's like, vastly certain to go badly. So we're in a very difficult situation, and it might be the best thing we can do is to have a tiny chance of success rather than a minuscule chance of success. Let's finish this video with a Lord of the Rings analogy. Imagine there's a lot of dwarves who are mining mithril, and this mithril is really great. You can use it to make expensive jewelry, or you can use it to make weapons that are better than any other kind of weapon. Unfortunately, a lot of the dwarves suspect that buried deep in the mine is a Balrog, and if you dig deep enough, you'll disturb the Balrog, he'll arise, and he'll kill everybody. So should the dwarves stop mining mithril? Well, from the point of view of all the dwarves, yeah, it's almost certainly not worth taking the chance of destroying the world to get this mithril. But from the viewpoint of an individual dwarf, it might well be worth it to mine the mithril. An individual dwarf might say, you know what, I'm probably not going to make much difference. I mean, if the Balrog is close to the surface, he's going to get disturbed no matter what I do. So at least if I mine mithril for a while, I can have a lot of money and have a pretty nice life until the world ends. And the dwarf might further reason, there's sort of a limited amount of space in the mine. Only so many of us can fit there when we're already at capacity. So if I just give up my space, someone else will take it. So there's literally no marginal difference if I mine compared to someone else mines. Now imagine instead that there are different tribes, each led by a king, and each tribe has a bunch of miners, but an individual king could pull out all of his miners. Should a king do that? Well, an individual king would have to say, if I pull out my men, there's no reason to think that other kings will pull out theirs, and they'll get the mithril, they'll get better weapons, they'll be able to conquer me. Now, all the kings maybe could come to a deal to have no one mine the mithril, but let's say there's invisibility potions out there, and any one king would say, gee, if I don't mine and I stick to the agreement, that creates an enormous incentive for another king to use this invisibility potions and have his people mine. Because they'll mine, they'll get the mithril, it'll be extraordinarily useful, and they could conquer me. So everyone not trusting each other makes it much, much harder for anyone to come to an agreement. And each king might reason, this is really, really bad, but for me it gets even worse if I don't mine. So all the kings will mine, they'll hope the Balrog either doesn't exist or is very, very deep and they won't disturb him for a century or so.